Welcome to Sports Quotes and Facts Untold. Today I'm joined by Evertonian author Jim Keoghan, who has a new book out. It's everything you wanted to know about Everton, but were afraid to ask. Jim, congratulations on publishing the book. What can readers expect to find in it?
Well, I think, hopefully, as the title kind of outlines, pretty much everything. I mean, it's there from kind of the very first kick into the ball around at the park by St. Domingos, right across the history of the club to the modern era under Machiri. So it's the greatest games, the greatest players, the greatest moments, shit players, shit moments, great managers, Mike Walker. It is pretty much, I mean, I'm sure I've missed little bits out here and there, but I've tried to encompass like the vast span of kind of Evertonia. So if you read it, you should get a taste of kind of where we are, what we are really.
Yeah. And what gave you the idea to write the book now?
I think a lot of kind of clubs have these kind of miscellanies where like it's a lot of information. It can be quite dry. I mean, it's good to read, but when you read through them, you're thinking, well, that's just kind of facts and figures. So I wanted to include a bit of that, but also give it kind of a bit more kind of emotion in it as well, to give a flavour of what it is to be an Evertonian. So it wasn't just about the good bits. I tried to include, because I think it's really important to kind of why we are what we are, to include the many Everton that moments that kind of scattered our history, the near misses, which are numerous, the examples of appalling bad luck, which again are frequent, the mismanagement, the bad decisions made. So you get the idea to get kind of, you've got those facts and figures that kind of give you a handle of kind of Everton's history, but also you get a bit more about kind of why we are what we are.
And as you say, you've talked about the emotion of it rather than just facts and figures, and I think that probably allows you to get that like sort of self-deprecation across and the gallows humour, which is part of being a modern day Evertonian, really, because we've gone a while now without winning anything, and then there is the sort of humorous elements of that, of those failures. How important do you think, as you mentioned, you've included the negatives as well. How important do you think that is in the sort of the narrative of Everton over the last 30 years to include that bit as well?
I think it's really important. I think we're pretty good at laughing at ourselves. I think a lot of, if you certainly compare us to the neighbours who have no sense of humour at all and cannot ever laugh at themselves, Evertonians really do. As you said, that gallows humour, we've been through a long dry spell in terms of winning trophies. We've had enormous upheaval in recent years, a lot of disappointment at the same time. So I think it's important for us to be able to laugh at ourselves. So I wanted that to come across in the book, that it's not just about, we've had fantastic moments in our history. We've had success, and that's all in there with the cups, the titles, kind of our one success in Europe, and the greats who play for us as well. They're all there, the great number nines, kind of other great players, great managers too. But I don't think you kind of appreciate what a modern Evertonian is. You've got to also have the dark as well as the light, and there's plenty of that to kind of pick through. So it's and there is plenty of funny moments in our history. Even when things go badly, there's still kind of a funny side to it. And I think, as I said, unlike quite a lot of fans, we are able to laugh at ourselves.
Yeah. And do you think, Jim, that we are quite Everton are quite a unique club in the sense that, yeah, they have the things going wrong, particularly in the last 30 years. But as you mentioned, there is a massively rich history of genuine success. And probably there aren't many clubs out there. I'm just thinking off the top of my head now, maybe Aston Villa are quite similar, maybe Tottenham, to an extent, maybe West Ham. But in terms of actually having the really good and the pretty shit, I think Everton are quite unique, and that must be great to get your teeth into when you're writing about that.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think we're unusual to being so good for so long. I mean, really from the games, from the kind of the football league's inception, right up until probably the very early 90s, Everton were, although we had a couple of spells in the lower tier, Everton are huge. I think we were one of the third most successful club up until our kind of 90s downturn. So, yeah, as you said, there are other clubs who are quite similar to that, but nothing quite like Everton really. It's which again, it makes it interesting because you're exploring something which I think is quite unique. You're exploring We are a big club with a massively rich history, and we've always been around, really since kind of football first started, and kind of early years of the FA Cup and into the early years of the Football League. From that point on, Everton have always been part of kind of football's narrative at the very top, bar a couple of years in the second tier. So you've got this wonderful kind of contrast of this massive club with a rich history. You've also endured this kind of long period of incredible frustration, and our sense of where we should be and where we are. Kind of that gap creates a tension that it's interesting, and also it is kind of intermittently funny as well.
Yeah, and as you say, we've been around since day dot. Basically, we were founding members of the Football League. Have you noticed as well, Jim, through writing it, that Everton, I always feel like, are trendsetters in football as well? Evertonians unlock the fact that we big up the fact we had the first undersoil heating, we had the first 1 to 11, but I think there is a certain pride in that as well.
Yeah, we've always been forward looking. The only reason we got included in the Football League in the first instance because Everton were so progressive. We read where football was going, but by Everton standards, we were unusually organised. We built a proper ground. We got in pros. We became the biggest club in the city. So when they were looking around for a football team in 1888, and he wanted one from a big city who got where football was going. Even though Everton's kind of football history wasn't any great shake at that point, we were like the coming super club really, and and that followed for a long time. Everton were kind of pioneers, built the first proper ground in England. I just said all the other things like the first dugouts, first kind of undersoil heating, that kind of stuff. We were always at the forefront. Again, until probably the kind of the 90s, and then we become a very different sort of football club where we're kind of on the back foot, and we become sloppy, and in some ways we're like a Football League club in the Premier League age for quite a long time. We even get ourselves a billionaire and manage to fuck that up as well. So it's we get into Russian money just as Russian money sours. So we kind of all those things that we were kind of well run and organised and forward thinking, and you get this kind of flip for the last 30 years or more than, I think, nearly 35 years, where we become a very different kind of football club, where it's we're often kind of just you kind of know what it is. It's got that kind of Everton that, isn't it? We kind of on the pitch and off the pitch, you're thinking, oh yeah, there we go, we fucked that up, and that's a mess. So it's and again, I think that's quite interesting because why did that happen? Why we like that? It's there's a lot to explore there.
Yeah, and you mentioned the billionaire Farhad Moshiri. It's coming up to the 8-year anniversary. I was going to say what a great 8 years it's been. Absolutely not. Obviously now, I feel like Everton now. I always look at it. We feel like one of those basket case clubs from Italy in the 90s where they'd get through 27 managers in a season and reappoint them, and there's always stuff going on. Obviously now, Jim, you've written a book about Everton. How much of a challenge has that been? Because I'm just thinking in the last 6 months, there has probably been more Everton news than there has in years of our history, probably. How has that been to react to different things, and how has that shaped your writing as well?
Yeah, quite a lot, especially when you're writing about kind of the modern era. So, like, I've got a section on Moshiri that I had to rewrite, God knows how many times, because weekly, the kind of how he was seen was shifting. You've got at one point we're thinking, will Everton even exist? So when you're writing a section on the Moshiri era, if he's ultimately causing the demise of the club, that kind of colours it differently. So it's it's been that kind of covering the modern era in terms of will we get relegated? We're probably going to spend a third spell in the second tier. That's all kind of up in the air. I mean, even now, the book is out, and kind of when I was finishing it, we hadn't had a 10-point deduction. I'd finished it feeling confident that Everton would remain in the Premier League and everything would be okay, and then that drops. And you're thinking, oh well, that's gonna, all my kind of predictions are going to be slightly flawed. So it's as you said, it's been a period of incredible turmoil that seems to ratchet up that's the weird thing. It's not like we're slowing down. We're getting, by the week, more and more things are happening. So I mean, where we are now, God knows what will be the case in March. Who knows where everything will be and what will have happened since. It's we've become a bit of a soap opera, and it's that makes it quite difficult to kind of nail down.
And obviously, there's the reacting to different elements, but you've also written a lot of other Everton books, Jim. How is this one compared to the others?
There's a lot more fact checking in this one.
Yeah.
That's kind of taking a lot. And also, you want to get it right because a lot of people have got kind of emotionally invested in Everton. If you get one thing wrong, you're going to get kind of making sure everything is totally right. I'm still think I probably messed something up in there, but I think 99% of it should be all right. So that's a lot more work for that. It's a different way of writing because when you write, the previous books I've written have been kind of either about just games or Highs, Lows and Bakayokos was like a sweep of 10 years. There's kind of a narrative element to that. This is more just an entry, maybe 500 words and a shorter one. But that gives you a bit more freedom. So you can write something like the top 10 Everton at moments. You can write about our 5 biggest hate figures, non-Liverpool and Liverpool. So there's slightly more creative freedom in writing this, coupled with an enormous amounts of kind of research and fact-checking work, which is kind of the less fun element, I guess.
Yeah. And is there anything else you'd say you've learned, Jim, throughout the process?
Well, in terms of like Everton, it's weird how I felt confident after writing Everton's Greatest Games that I knew pretty much everything about the club because again I covered its entire history. Yet there's still kind of players that you're kind of thinking you vaguely knew about, and you kind of learn more about that. I think I'm like a lot of Blues that my frame of reference for Everton is pretty much my life. So kind of from the 80s onwards, I know I don't know everything, but I know a lot. And through writing, you go back into kind of the previous decades. But even now, there's still kind of bits here and there you thinking, oh, I didn't know that. I didn't realize that. And kind of, which is nice. It's an honor to kind of have the opportunity to spend time kind of wallowing in your club and really spending time learning as much as you can about it, really.
Yeah. And there's a chapter that looks at Evertonian hate figures. A few of those play in the colour red. A few of them wear black and have a whistle as well. I think it's fair to say, isn't it, that Evertonians do have long memories. I mean, I'm 32 years old and I know all about Clive Thomas. Do you think that is part of just being a fan? That tribal element, the rivalries, there's something in that, isn't there? If someone crosses you don't forget it.
Definitely. I think that's definitely the case with Liverpool. I mean, you can go back to like Emlyn Hughes, Jimmy Case. You can go back to players that for some, I think we generally hate most Liverpool players, but for some reason, some stick out more than others, like Gerrard and for a lot of people, Carragher. I think that's just natural part of being a football fan. You're emotionally invested in games, and every now and then somebody irritates you beyond reason. And you kind of latch onto that. But then we've also had, like, in terms of like referees, we've also had like moments of kind of bad luck at really important times in the kind of club's history. So you think back to like Kalina, you think back to Thomas. The list of referees who've kind of given us poor decisions in derbies kind of goes on and on, including one I had to add from the most recent derby. You think I had it all boxed off, and there's another example of an referee, favouring them. So it's whilst we do have that natural hate, I guess, that every football fan has in them. That's just the nature of the sport. I think we've certainly had, because of our kind of weird relationship with Liverpool and the way the referees, I don't think they ever favour us. That's the weird thing. When you're going back through our history, you're looking for examples of like, oh, it might even out. There's not one. There's not a game where we get away with it. It's always them. So you're thinking when you've got that sort of like narrative, it's not surprising that we really recall their names and what they did wrong and how they wronged us, because it's kind of it seems to be part of our relationship with Liverpool now is a terrible referee, and that's kind of that goes back to the 70s.
Yeah. And what do you think, Jim, makes the Everton narrative so unique compared to, if you were writing a book about other clubs? What is it that makes an Everton book an Everton book?
There's a lot of bad luck. I know all clubs have their kind of bad luck, but Everton, when you go through, like we should have had a lot more success than we've had. That's kind of my main take from Everton's history. When you kind of a lot of that is just kind of the nature of football. You don't win every final you get to, you don't win every title that you're charging for. Having like 2 teams broken up by world wars. Whilst a lot of, we aren't the victims of world wars, but as kind of a side effect of that, we had 2 title winning sides broken up. No other club in Europe had that. Then we get a 3rd title winning side, probably our greatest ever team, broken up by the European ban. That really sticks out. Even now, I mean, the 10-point deduction, we are obviously in the wrong place at the wrong time. We're being made. Being punished unfairly because the Premier League have got another issue going on, which against Everton's bad luck, and that pops up really from kind of the club's inception so many times when you're thinking, oh, we could have won a league there, we could have won a cup there, we could have been more dominant the following years as well for that. Time and time again, we have these examples of misfortune, and I think. If it hadn't been for that, we'd be thinking maybe in our history we'd be more like a Man U, whereas we're kind of historically kind of maybe a step down. And so that's kind of my main take, that life's not fair and we have a lot of
Yeah. Sounds amazing, Jim, and I can't wait to read it. So where can people buy the book?
So at the moment, it's on Amazon. So it's published through them. So there's Kindle and paperback versions. But I'm going to talk to the Everton Heritage Society and see if we can get a few copies in St. Luke's as well, hopefully. Brilliant.
Class. Well, thanks for joining us, Jim. Makes a great song filler, doesn't it, for all Evertonians? And I think as well, it's really good. It documents a really pivotal time in the club's history. It takes it up to that point. You obviously cover all the history. But I think it's a great book to look back on from 2023, when I don't think at no point in the club's history have things been so much up in the air.
Yeah. So yeah, exactly. It's a really, it's time of turmoil, isn't it? Where we don't even know for certain if Everton will exist, in a few years' time. So yeah, definitely in our history, it's never been quite as bad as this. It's a really strange time to be a blue at the moment.
Yeah.